Hi. I am actually refilming this video, and the reason why is because A, my first one turned into me ranting and saying the same thing over and over again for 55 minutes, and I am trying so fucking hard to break that down, and I was able to cut out everything that I was comfortable with and leave it at 48 minutes. I am not going to sit here and try to upload a video to YouTube that is 48 minutes long because my goddamn 10-minute videos take 45 minutes to post. So I'm just not going to do that to myself or to you, and no one cares enough about anything that I'm doing or saying in this video to sit here and watch me talk and draw fucking hearts on my face for an hour. I'm going to be drawing a bunch of fucking hearts on my face, which is a thing that I did on TikTok because I wanted to do something red because I dyed my hair. By the way, if you aren't new and this is just the first non-ASMR video of mine that you're watching because I don't post non-ASMR videos, I dyed the front part of my hair red. I also pierced my second holes. No, my earrings aren't just that far over. These are actually, there's another hole here. Anyway, in case you were wondering, I'm gonna just go over the palettes and shit that I'm using while I'm talking. But I wanted to have an excuse to talk about, at first, colonizers. Primarily Spain and England. But then I realized that I kind of have beef with a lot more random people in Europe. So I'm actually going to talk about Europeans in general, and then also Americans. And part of the reason why I'm refilming this is because I don't think I went hard enough on Americans in that video. Imagine an American going online and being like, oh yeah, this is something that Spain is doing that's kind of shitty, but she's American, you know? I'm not gonna do that to you. If you don't know what I'm gonna be doing, and if you're actually here for the makeup, I'm gonna be drawing little hearts around my eyes. I saw that on Pinterest, and then doing a heart in blush. I know everybody did that last year, but they did it inverse, where they put on a bunch of blush and then put concealer hearts. I'm just drawing hearts with red. I'm just literally just drawing hearts. And then I'm doing a heart thing here. None of these are unique. I just shoved them together into one particular look. I'm gonna start off with this palette. It's called the Zulu. And I'm basically just doing the pink, and then I'm gonna layer in Midnight Masquerade the Gaston red shade to make it because I don't know if my hair is red or pink at this point. I'm also kind of colorblind. Anyways, so the reason why I wanted to film a video like this, what possessed me to film the last version of this video, was actually because I saw a TikTok, and basically it was this random American chick, and she was saying these are the two words that you have to ask the English to say, right? And the two words, in case you were wondering, I have never personally heard a British person saying either of these words. I don't know how, I can't picture how the accent would be different. And quite frankly, the comment section on that video made me not give a crap. But basically, she said that you have to ask an English person to say yogurt and salon. And my initial response to that video was, oh, cool, the accent is different. Wow, that's amazing. And I clicked on the comment section expecting to see people oh no, you should ask people from this country to say this word or whatever, because typically when an American, because the thing about America is that we don't have an accent. We have a crap ton of accents, and we don't have a dialect or a culture. We have a crap ton of them. It differs by the state. But that's actually, I'm gonna get into that later because I watched a video about nougat. Anyways. Because this is what I do with my time. But when you are in America and people start talking about the differences in accents or the differences in dialects, it's always a fun conversation. Oh, you call them millipedes, we call them roly-polies. That's so cute and cool, whatever. I wonder how that happened. And people will learn about the linguistics of stuff. And it's a genuinely interesting and enlightening conversation about the differences in culture. Because believe it or not, it's actually not that fucking deep how you say the word yogurt. It really fucking isn't. But instead of getting a bunch of fun, lighthearted comments in that comment section, every single one was somebody in England saying, oh yeah, we made up the language, so y'all are wrong. First of all, from what I've heard, could be wrong, but from what I've heard a couple of times, we didn't change the accent. You change the accent if you're in England. Because what happened was, back in the colonizer days, everybody in England was speaking with like closer to this accent now. I mean, obviously it's probably changed over the past 400 years, but this is what people were speaking like. And the rich people in England were speaking like your traditional London accent. Speaking of which, if you hear somebody in America say British accent, they mean London accent. So if you're telling me that the way that the English say yogurt is more correct to how English was made, which it wasn't, because you guys changed your accent. We have your ancestors' accents. So that doesn't make any sense, first of all. But second of all, people in England don't all have the same accent. So if you're talking to somebody in Northern England who sounds like a spicy Scottish person, are they correct when they say the word salon, or are you correct if you're from London if you say the word salon? That makes no sense. I hear people in Britain talking all the time about the differences, or even in Ireland, like just that entire whole area, talking about how they can tell exactly what town you're from. So you're telling me that you are always correct, but how are you always correct if you're always different? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Also, do people in England, or just in like the British Isles in general, speak to each other like, oh, you pronounce it this way, we say it this way, just like how Americans do? Because that makes no sense how you're just ripping on Americans. Like, that seems kind of like maybe it's almost a more historical hatred of Americans. I can trace my ancestry straight back to England, because for some reason people in England seem to forget that Americans are English. Like, I can trace my ancestry straight back to England in the 1500s, and so can the majority of white Americans, and probably some other Americans too. Sweetheart, we are your child, baby. Okay, so you can't sit there and be like, we invented the language. No, you, Bethany, did not invent shit. Our ancestors invented the fucking language. And I said our because we share the same goddamn grandma, okay? Imagine if your cousin came to your house and was like, oh yeah, you say our last name wrong. The last name that neither of us invented because it was from our ancestors that we share? Yeah. That makes no sense. So how the fuck can people in England use the excuse that they invented the language? The only thing that's different about people in England versus people in America is that you happen to speak English and live in a country called England. We're both just speaking the dialects that evolved in our general areas, which have to exist, because the only way that a language can stay stagnant throughout all of time is if it fucking dies like Latin. So if you're so proud of your language, then you would want dialects to keep forming. Because you wouldn't want your language to die out, right? That makes no sense to me. And when I used to be having this argument with people, I would say, you don't see the Spanish talking about how the Mexicans speak a worse dialect than they do. But apparently they fucking do that. The Spanish are so, like, convinced that they have the only correct dialect of Spanish because they're the Spanish and they invented it. Sweetheart, that pisses me off a lot fucking more than England does. That pisses me off so much more than England does, because you're gonna sit here and tell me that you happen to be the only fucking white country that speaks a language and you're also the only one that's right? Like, you're gonna tell me that you're going to move to a land, force all of the indigenous people there to speak your language and take on your culture, burn their libraries, pretend like they were illiterate, and then fuck off back to Spain and pretend like you're better than them because you spoke it first? Suck my dick. Like, fuck you, Spain. Anyway, I don't know about the French. Or the fucking Dutch, or whatever. I can't think of a fucking country that speaks Dutch other than the Netherlands. And they don't even speak Dutch, they speak English. Why the fuck do they speak English? I keep on seeing these countries, side note, like digressing a fat lot, but I keep on seeing these countries who are nowhere near England, nowhere near America, nowhere near anywhere that speaks English, that just speak English. Like, why? Like, why do the Singaporeans just speak English? Were they like colonized by England or something and we just didn't care enough to learn about that in history? Like, I mean, the American school system is shitty, but like, oh, fun fact. You want to know how I learned that Nikki Tutorials was Dutch? Because it's taken me 14 minutes to draw 2 hearts on my face because I keep on getting distracted. But I remember I was watching a video of hers, and it was one of the first and only videos of hers that I've ever seen. And she started talking about like high school. And the thing is, I cannot come up right off the top of my head right now with the name of a makeup or beauty related YouTuber who is not from America, specifically from LA. Like, they're all from fucking LA. But basically I made a comment because she was talking about being in high school when she was like 12. Obviously, I understand that there's different school systems in different places. I have had the English one explained to me many a time by random people in England on the internet. And so if somebody had just explained to me in the comment section, oh yeah, she's actually Dutch. So when she said that she went to high school when she was 12, she wasn't using that in the same definition that an American would be thinking of high school. But the thing is, the Dutch speak English, right? But they don't just speak English. They speak English with literally no discernible accent. I'm going to go back in with this because they have really big pans. And then I'm just going to take like a big fluffy brush and draw hearts. Cool. Anyway, so the Dutch might have an accent, but to me it just sounds literally American. So hearing somebody who is in a very American field speaking with an American accent, saying an American phrase like high school, like she wasn't saying sixth form or something, she said high school. Obviously, I was like, oh, you were in high school when you were 12? Because we start high school when we're typically 14, right? So I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe she's just really smart and she like skipped a couple of grades. And so I commented, keep in mind, I didn't even know anything about Nikki tutorials. And this was like a few years ago. And everybody in the comment section was like, oh my god, like Americans are so freaking like entitled and they think that everything is just American or whatever and everything's so Americentric there. Like she's literally Dutch. Like people from other fucking countries exist. And I was like, dude, if media is going to be Americentric, where every goddamn YouTuber is American, of course, if you're seeing somebody speaking with a seemingly American accent, you're going to think that they're American. Like, anybody would have said that. Like, really? Like, a really popular beauty YouTuber. They're all from fucking LA. And you're telling me that it's, like, my fault and that I'm such a bad person because I didn't assume that she was from the Netherlands. First of all, if you're a YouTuber and you're not American, I'm gonna assume you're British. I'm not gonna assume you're from the fucking Netherlands. Who is from the Netherlands? Like, that's such a random fucking place to be from. Anyway. Sorry, Netherlands, but... Or, like, maybe Canada. I don't know anything about the Canadian school system. Okay, so let me tell you how, on a side note, how Americans learn geography, or at least how we learned it in my school. We would go over the countries and where they are in certain places, and then we would have a test where we literally, like, label France, and label Germany, and label Bosnia. Like, that was what our test would be. And they were kind of hard because we would have to learn entire, like, continents at one time. So, like, learning Africa was kind of difficult, you know? But we wouldn't learn anything about culture. We wouldn't really learn anything about, like, cities. Like, you could, as a side, like, as some extra credit, label, like, the capitals or whatever. But nobody really did that because you couldn't just label a couple of capitals. You had to, like, memorize all of them and label all of them. And so obviously if you're talking about Europe where there's a bunch of big countries and then a crap ton of little countries, like obviously you're not going to want to memorize all these capitals, especially since you definitely can't spell half of them. I'll be seeing something, right? Like I'll be online and I'll see a name of like some random figure in media who's like African, right? And then I'll see their name and I'll be like, oh, I mispronounced that. Like, let me go Google it to make sure that I'm pronouncing it right. And I did pronounce it right because for some reason, African names, everybody thinks that they're so hard, but then they're literally the most self-explanatory things ever. But then people in Europe have like 47 Z's in their names and they pronounce every single one of them differently. And I'm like, how? And it's funny because you'll see all these white kids in class whenever you're reading like a book that takes place in Africa. And they're like, and then... oh boy, yeah. Oh my god, like I said that so wrong. And then their name has 47 Z's in it. Sweetheart. And then they're like Polish. Like, sweetheart. And you couldn't pronounce... I don't know. But anyways, my point is, we don't learn about other places. So whenever people online are like blaming us for not knowing about other places, I'm sorry, you guys literally learn like 47 fucking languages in school. Okay, you probably have a actually advanced geography class. You can't blame us for not having information that no one fucking gives to us. Okay, you guys, even if you don't learn about America in school, guess what? Media is very Americentric. All your influencers that you watch are probably American. So you learn about American culture just from being online. We are already here. We don't have anything to learn when we were just like watching fucking YouTube because all of the YouTubers are fucking American. Like how do you expect us to learn things about other places if you don't give us the opportunity to learn shit about other places? If you're in English right now and you're one of those people who said we invented the language, go grab Canterbury Tales, which is not Old English, it's Middle English, and try to read it and translate it to me. Do it. Go, now. Do it. I dare you. You can't. You fucking can't. Because we don't speak the same way because dialects form. That's how languages avoid dying out. If you don't want other people to be speaking your language, don't colonize. And don't force them to. I just realized this is a red look. Cool. Anyways, final points on Spain. Again, you did not invent the language. Your ancestors did. And by the way, people in Mexico, people in Argentina, because you colonized them, they have the same ancestors as you, so they can use the exact same excuse that they made Spanish. Third of all, stop being racist. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Americans have like baby squabbles with certain people in Latin America, but an American is an American, sweetheart. Like, if you're gonna sit here and come for the Latin Americans, that's one of the most supportive communities online. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I will still come for you. I will still come for all those racist pendejos, which will hit them extra hard because that's a Mexican word, so they don't even think it's real Spanish, in fucking Spain, who are sitting there on their racist-ass high horses, thinking that their language is the only fucking correct one because they say vosotros. Fuck you. I hope that the Portuguese don't do that. Because I have a friend who's in Portugal, and that would be really awkward if they were talking shit about Brazil. Final points on France. I don't really have any final points on France. I'm just outlining this in the red, by the way. I don't really have any final points on France because I don't know what they're doing. However, one thing that I can say that the French do that pisses me off is every time that you see somebody who may or may not be from France, like initially, because a lot of the time they actually do live in France, but they're not like originally from France, speaking French online. And there's always like a native French person who's coming online like, oh yeah, we don't sound like that. Like, sweetheart, shut the fuck up. Like, I remember I was, again, scrolling through TikTok, and there was a video of this girl singing like a song that was in French. And I was reading through the comments, and half of them were Americans saying, oh my god, like, this is such a cute language, like, I fucking love French, it's so pretty. Like, I've never seen anybody who's American say that they don't think that French is a pretty language. Like, all of us agree that French and Spanish and like other Romance languages are really pretty languages. And that's the only thing that comes out of our mouths about things like French is, oh my gosh, like, French is so pretty, or like, I wish I could learn French. On that video, there was one guy who commented underneath a comment that was assumably from like an American saying, oh my gosh, like, the French language sounds so pretty. And then he was like, we don't sound like that. Like, shut the fuck up, Jean-Paul, okay? Listen to the video. We're appreciating your language, okay? I guarantee you that there are different accents from native French speakers. I guarantee you. Like, when the French are mean online, the French are mean online. But when people in England do it, it's like it doesn't come off like, I hate you, you know? It comes off like, I hate everything, but also you, like, also fuck you, you know? Which is a degree funnier, like a certain degree funnier. And so when I'm seeing people, like, I remember I was watching a series of videos online where some person was doing apartment or like flat videos in certain cities. So they did like one in LA and then one in London, you know, shit like that. And I was laughing my ass off because if you're looking at the comments of that video, every single one is a fucking British person complaining, and they're sitting here like, oh, the Americans complain so much. And literally every single like, I was literally reeling. I've seen a lot of Canadians who are coming online recently, and they're like, yeah, we don't like Americans either. And it's funny because we don't have any beef with Canada. Like, we literally do not. Like, the only stereotypes, like American stereotypes for Canadians, are literally, oh yeah, they're so nice. Like, y'all are so friendly. And then the Canadians just, like, hate us, apparently, which is funny to me because see, this is where I'm gonna get into Americans. Okay, Americans are entitled as fuck. And I'm primarily talking about, like, older Americans. Because if you're talking to somebody who's, like, 30, oh yeah, I do have another rant about this. I was talking earlier about, like, post-World War II. Basically, if you don't know, the 20s, we were really rich. The 30s, we were in this thing called the Great Depression. I don't know if other countries have to learn about this, but that was the poorest that we've ever really been, was in the 30s. And what dragged us out of that was actually joining World War II. And then obviously, like, we won World War II. Like, everybody after World War II was probably very prosperous if they were on, like, the Britain, France, like, that side. Like, everybody was probably really rich. Because we won it. But basically in the US, it was a very drastic change from how it was before because we were in the worst financial state of our life, and then we were just in the best one of our life suddenly in like a year. And so basically there's this thing called the baby boom. So if you've ever heard the expression like okay boomer or baby boomer, this is where this comes from, because everybody came back from the war and started screwing, and like they started families, and they would do this thing where they would move out of cities and they would move into like suburbia and like raise their families. And basically how it worked was the dads would like go to work The moms would stay home and deal with the kids. So a lot of the reason why older people, like baby boomer era, especially the men, are very entitled is because they never had to come home after school and cook themselves ramen for dinner. They never had both of their parents working. They never had to figure out how to do shit by themselves, because all they would have to do is go, hey mom, make me a sandwich, and then they would get a sandwich, you know? Especially men, like older men, can just take women for granted so much more than like the younger ones. And a lot of it is because they literally had a woman who was doing their every fucking, like, she lived for them. So all of those older people never had to experience like doing shit for themselves. So that's part of why they're so entitled. And it's funny because if you see people who were like 80, like who grew up during like the 30s, like my great grandma was born in 1928, you know, like the Shirley Temple fucking era, those people are a lot less entitled. And it's because they grew up in the 30s. They know what it's like to have like no money and to have to take care of younger siblings. The thing is too, they weren't just growing up in an area, like in an era of entitlement. They were also growing up during the Cold War, which is, if you don't know what that is, basically the Soviet Union, particularly Russia, and the United States got into this whole like back and forth, where we were talking about A, nukes, and B, like the space race, like getting to space. And it's funny because I learned on Tumblr that India actually like single-handedly beat both of us in the space race, but of course I didn't learn about that because textbooks are written by white people. So but anyways, from what I learned, Americans were kind of like scared shitless because we didn't know if we were going to be fucking nuked. And so what do you do if you're in a situation where it's terrifying but you have like children on hand, right? Like I remember when I was a kid, there was a tsunami that ricocheted off of Japan and like hit us, and I lived in Oregon at the time. And my dad was in the Coast Guard, so he was like going out and telling surfers to like get out of the water because there were surfers in the water. And me and my sisters and my mom were packing into the car and driving inward to my great grandma Yvonne. She's from Canada, by the way, to her house, which was in Eugene, which is a couple of hours inward in Oregon, so the tsunami wouldn't like hit there. And my mom was probably fucking terrified. She was probably scared shitless. Her husband was going out into a fucking tsunami, and I did not know. I was none the wiser, because the entire time it was like, oh yeah, like we're fine, like we're gonna go see Baba, and you're gonna go see like your grandma and her cats, you know, like it's gonna be so fun. Because that's what you do with children when there's like a dramatic situation. You don't tell them that something is happening, because then the country is just gonna be like paralyzed with fear, you know? So all of the American like teachers and all of the like propaganda, I guess, but it was for a good purpose. Everybody in America was just kind of telling their kids, oh no, like we don't have to worry about anything. Like Russia is nowhere near us. We are the best global power. We have the best military. Like that's why all of our tax dollars go to the military, because we're so good. Like we're so much better than everybody else. And it wasn't to like convince the American children that we were better. It was to convince the American children that we didn't have anything to fear, because we were afraid. Like all of the adults were afraid who knew what was going on, were afraid. But the issue is now all of those children are grown up and they're in the government now. And so all of the older people who you see online going, oh yeah, America's the best place to live, it's because it's a remnant from that, because nobody came in and said, oh yeah, by the way, we were joking. Like we just wanted to make sure that you weren't afraid of Russia. They had to be raised in that climate because it was a very different climate to anything else that we've experienced. And unfortunately, those people raised the people in their 40s who raised us. So now if you see a lot of people who are like assholes in the US, a lot of it is because of its remnants from that era, you know? So yeah, we can be assholes, and yeah, there's obviously a difference into how other people treated us and how other people thought of us before and after World War II. But that's literally why. Like that's entirely why. And I'm gonna sit here really quick and talk some shit about Americans. First of all, I was reading comments the other day. I was reading a comment from somebody who's Bosnian, and if you don't know, she is hijabi because they're Muslim there. Like there's a lot of Muslims there. And she was talking about how she knows that this isn't every American, but she came to America and everybody was like talking shit about her and like yelling at her or whatever for not speaking English because she was a hijabi and she looked like a typical Muslim person who's from the Middle East. And if you don't know, we have a lot of problems with the Middle East, which were entirely our fault, but we're not going to get into that. And if you live in America and you've ever done that, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Like I live in Sonoma, right? There's two like different cultures in Sonoma. There's like the richer, like wider side of Sonoma, and then there's like the ghetto. I don't like that word, but like this side that's more poor, which is where I live, which is where a majority of like the Mexicans live. And I have seen people, particularly on the other side of Sonoma, like giving dirty looks to people who are speaking Spanish here. In a fucking in a city where it's always been like a 50-50 Spanish-English type of split. On my side of town, there are signs on stores that are only in one language, but the language is Spanish. Like, you are not gonna fucking sit here and tell me that you are going to get so pissed off when people are speaking Spanish in public. When you live in Sonoma, California, everybody fucking knows Spanish except for you. Fuck you. Okay? Like, why are you so fucking entitled? Like, why? The only thing with language, we don't care about England, okay? We don't fucking give a flying fuck about Australia. We don't give a flying fuck about Canada, okay? We don't care about the fact that you say Z. The only thing that pisses me off about Americans regarding language is how fucking entitled and bigoted they can fucking be to people who come here from other countries and are speaking different languages. Fuck you, especially if you're not white. Like, if somebody in America sees somebody who's speaking like Polish, who's like blonde, they're not gonna even care. But then the second that they walk past somebody speaking Spanish who looks like they're from Mexico, now it's a difference. When everybody in fucking America speaks Spanish, fuck you. You're in America, speak English. We don't even have a national language. Google it. We don't. Why? Like, that's my problem with America. That's my beef that I didn't get into. If you're actually here for the makeup, this is the lipstick that I got from that collab with ASM Artistry, because it's literally the only good red lipstick that I have. It's sparkly, but it doesn't show up. And all that I did was I like made a heart. Oh, also, if you're wondering, I'm just drawing the outline. If you're wondering, Americans don't just change things because we want to change things. They always have reasons. The reason why we say Z instead of Z is because it makes the alphabet rhyme, so it's easier for kids. I see a lot of people talking about how we say fall instead of autumn. No, we don't. We know what autumn means. We say fall, which first of all was an English term, and we say fall for children because the leaves fall down and it's easier for them to remember. So if anybody who's an adult in the US says fall, first of all, it's not American, it's English. Second of all, that's left over like a remnant from their childhood. Or like maybe they live with children, you know? Also, fall a lot of the time on like advertisements is easier. Like fall fresh or shit like that. Like that's easier for branding and it's less letters that you have to fit on a sign. Cool. We took the U's out of words, which personally, it makes sense both ways. But I actually like it better with the U's in them, because if you're looking at the word color, we do say the O's differently. Color. Like it would if you say C-O-L-U-R, that looks more like it's pronounced color than C-O-L-O-R, you know? So we should have the U's. But the reason that we don't is because we had to pay per letter for telegrams. So we just took out all the letters that were like superfluous, that didn't really need to be in the word. And the U's happened to be on that collateral, you know? But it's not like Americans are just like, oh yeah, let's change everything. Most of the time, you guys changed it and then forgot that you did. Like, we never changed our accent. You know? You did. Except for the South. I don't know how the fuck that happened. I don't care. I don't know. Like, I was watching, I know I mentioned this earlier, and I'll talk about it here. I was watching a video where a guy was going over how nougat is made. And nougat here is like the white stuff, like white nougat or German nougat, you know, that you would call it in other countries. And it's funny because people in the comments, there were some people who were actually like nice about it, and they were like, oh, I didn't even realize that Americans say nougat for like this white stuff because we have like hazelnut. Like that was the first like top comment that I saw, was somebody saying, oh yeah, like our nougat's hazelnut, like that's so cool and funny, you know, because not everybody in England, or not everybody in, I guess, wherever the fuck he was in Europe, can be assholes. But then there were a lot of people who were like, oh yeah, Americans have sugary nougat and we have like a real nougat made with hazelnut, because of course the Americans have the processed sugary food. First of all, Americans have the processed sugary food because of capitalism, okay? We're not, individual Americans aren't like, oh yeah, let's eat like bullshit, like let's eat chemicals for dinner. You know, like we hate it. We don't fucking like that. We don't like that. We really don't. And we've been trying to push for more natural food for a long fucking time now. But it's funny because people in the comment section too were like, hey, this version of nougat is European. This was the original European nougat. It's funny because there was somebody in Germany who was commenting, and he was like, oh yeah, we call your like hazelnut nougat nut nougat, and we call that like the white nougat nougat. So funny because people in Europe learn one thing that they think makes Americans look bad and just run with it. Just run with it, and every single time it's something that's European. It's every single time. Like, ew, Americans say fall, haha, y'all are so stupid. It's literally an English term. Anyways, so I added concealer here, but I don't want to add concealer. I also did not add mascara. I don't like mascara. I don't like eyelashes, so. I feel like I do looks like this more often because I don't like mascara and I don't like eyelashes, and I feel like if the look is weird in general, no one's gonna comment on the fact that I don't have mascara on, you know? Because, like, none of this fits a societal standard for makeup. This is hearts, you know? I also added some blush, and I added, I went into this palette and I added this color for blush. But I'm not gonna do that right now because I only filmed this video to talk shit about everybody on planet Earth. So yeah, final points for the video. If you live in a country that the language that you're speaking happens to be named for, you did not invent the language. You do not get a superiority complex because it's a lot more complicated than that. Second of all, food and culture is always European. Like, if you're gonna talk shit about Americans for doing something that you think is funny, Google it, because it's definitely European. It definitely was European. Thirdly, if you're American, stop being a racist asshole. It's not that fucking hard. It's really not that fucking hard to just not be a bigot. Like, stop being bigots. Stop making people not like your country. There's so much more that America has to offer, and people aren't coming here because of people like you. So shut the fuck up, okay? Fourth of all, if you're Spanish, stop being a racist bigot, okay? Like, the idiocy, the caucasity that reeks through all of the comment sections that I've read recently is hilarious. Americans don't have beef with you, that's my fifth. We probably do not give a flying fuck about you, so you're sitting here and we're living in your heads rent-free, and we do not give a flying fuck about you. And it's so funny how so many English people will be like, ew, like Americans do blah 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 blah, and then all that we say about England is that we like the accent. Like, that's so hilarious to me that we are living in your heads, rent fucking free, bitch, no utilities, like, anyway. But yeah, that's this. If you cared about the makeup, I am so sorry, because this video was not about the makeup. And this has been 58 minutes, and bye.